Let's I kind of want to finish today with somebody has um I want to go back to the GABA and the glutamate. You mentioned how progesterone can impact those levels. GABA being the rest and digest, and you want that high at the right times to be able to relax and cool down. And glutamate being the excitatory fight or flight response. And when that's high, again, you might have like anxiety, depression, insomnia. Are there other things besides what are the other things besides hormones, besides progesterone, that can potentially impact those things like GABA and glutamate to cause maybe anxiety, depression, mood swings, and things of that nature?
Sure. So chronic secretion or the creation of cortisol from the adrenal glands. Adrenals are they're like this big, this little bean-sized organs that sit on top of our kidneys, and they create what are called catecholamines, which are epinephrine, norepinephrine, phenylephrine, are kind of adrenaline, right? All those things sound like adrenaline as well as cortisol. So the more that those adrenals continue to push out and they don't have time to recover, the more chemical imbalances we can have in the brain. Um, so when we kind of going back to the pillars of health, when you get morning sunlight or sunlight in the photoreceptors of the eyes, so getting them directly in your eyes, which is why like looking through a window or a glass doesn't allow for this phenomenon. It allows for a nice production of serotonin, which again, serotonin is part of our feel good, complex. And so a lack of sunlight or a lack of serotonin production naturally, whether it's through sunlight or engaging in healthy behaviors, self-care and whatnot, also can cause a lot of chemical disruption in the brain. The other thing is a hormone peptide called oxytocin. Oxytocin is released a few times. So during what people think about the most is probably during labor. So when a woman's uterus contracts during labor, that's a release of oxytocin. But we also release oxytocin when we orgasm. So having a healthy sex life with your partner can help a lot with, again, kind of fostering that natural bonding. It's like a very love hormone chemical cascade. And you can also release it just from, cuddling with your kids, physical touch, things that make you feel good. Watching a sappy movie can release oxytocin a lot. I think that's really important. And remember that our brain is really made up of three things, which is fat, water, and salt. So I talk to so many of my patients, barring they have normal kidney function, about the importance of sodium, which probably for a lot of your listeners, we think of sodium from fitness performance with, things like LMNT and all these electrolyte replacement drinks that are out there now. But sodium is super important in keeping all of the chemical processes of our brain stable. And if you're not eating a highly processed food diet, so you're trying to eat healthy, you probably are not getting enough sodium. So I always encourage people, and I recommend, 6 to 10 grams per day, like a pretty good amount. And I make people weigh it out, like measure it out. And I would say, okay, every morning, like weigh your salt or figure out, your electrolyte mixes to hit that, 8-gram target. And you have to do that every day. And you'd be shocked at how much better people feel.
So from a sodium perspective, let's say, like you said, if we're not eating highly processed diet, which is good, which we shouldn't, but there's just less sodium in our food. People are oftentimes low on sodium, and so let's say you're making 3 meals a day for yourself, you might, I guess, obviously certain foods have some sodium, and then obviously maybe like if you're putting salt on food, like you recommend, maybe people measure out or weigh out 6 to 10 grams of salt and make sure you get that on your food throughout the day.
Yeah, 100%, regardless
Wow.
of what you're getting from like natural foods. Yeah. It's a lot, but especially if you're sweating, if you're exercising, and that just continues to go up and up, but you'd be surprised at how much better you feel. And sodium is actually also very good for those adrenal glands who make all of our fight or flight neurotransmitters. One hallmark sign of adrenal insufficiency or disease of the adrenals is actually the craving for salty food and salty things, and it's because that organ really thrives on salt. So I'm a
Mm.
big fan of sodium for sure.
And so you said it's important for the brain because it just sodium is required for a lot of like the healthy processes of the brain.
Yeah, it keeps the right amount of water and sodium, which is good. Sodium helps with electrical conduction, which is what the brain does all day. It fires all these chemical signals, also for your heart as well. Sometimes I'll get patients, especially if they've started on Ozempic or one of these GLP-1 agonists, we'll see a trend and an increase in their resting heart rate and a decrease in their HRV. If we get them to replace their sodium appropriately, that will naturally rectify itself.
Mm. If somebody is sorry, I'm going longer on this topic because I think it's super important and I'm super interested in it. If somebody is getting their sodium levels tested, is that something that you can only really get tested in the moment? And if it's only tested in the moment, is it really an accurate view of what your sodium levels have been? And I guess, is that like a helpful thing to make sure you're checking on a semi regular basis or?
No, I don't know that unless you're really deficient or you have some congenital problem with your kidneys or you're not processing sodium, yeah, the snapshot in the blood isn't really the best reflection. If you are looking for like, okay, I'm going to hit my 6 to 10 grams a day, and then I'm also training for a, I don't know, but an endurance event, I'm going to do a triathlon coming up. You probably need to be replacing on top of that. So I think what would be better is to do like the sweat test on the skin and see what you're losing and make sure that, during sport or, around your athletic training, that then you're replacing with whatever your mineral loss is in your hydration drink or in your gels, whatever it is.
Mm. How do you, what's the sweat test on your skin to know how much sodium you're losing?
So a lot of different companies make them, what's it called? It's perfect hydration. I want to say it's precision hydration or something like that.
And so this is basically a test that will provide you with feedback as to how much sodium how much maybe sodium you lost in that particular bout of exercise, or is it like a rate of sodium loss?
Yeah, so it's in that bout of exercise, and you can do them multiple times. So precision hydration is the one that a lot of endurance athletes use, and they have a bunch of like it's an at-home thing, a sweat test you can do, and it will give you feedback at the little testing kit. So you can kind of take an average. You can test on, this is on a base. I always go back to running, but you can do it with cycling. So I'm just doing some zone 2 cycling for an hour and I lose X amount. When I'm doing VO2 max training, I lose Y amount. So when you're re-engaging in those similar workouts or training sessions, you kind of have an understanding of what your sweat loss is.
Mhm. Okay, awesome.
Remember, the body is
Last,
smart. It will, if it has too much of one thing, it will figure out how to get rid of it.
gotcha.